My husband died 10 years ago. Every month I transferred $500 to pay off his debts. But one day the bank called me. "Miss, your husband never had any debts." I froze, the coffee cup slipping from my hands. 10 years. $500 a month. $60,000 gone. And I hadn't been sending it to the bank at all. When I asked where my money was, they didn't just tell me Jana had it. They said some of it had moved through accounts I didn't recognize. Money flowing into places I trusted blindly. People I never imagined could be involved. My heart sank. This wasn't just a lie. It was a web of betrayal I hadn't even known existed. I sank into the kitchen chair, my hands shaking. 10 years of sacrifice, vacations I skipped. Dental work I postponed, all funneled into someone else's pockets. And now, pieces of it were scattered further than I could trace. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Jana. "Hi Margaret, did this month's payment go through?" Almost there, almost there. She had the audacity to act like nothing had happened. My vision blurred, not from grief anymore, but from rage and disbelief. I knew one thing for sure, I wasn't just going to sit quietly anymore. I spread all 120 Western Union receipts across the dining table, neatly filed by year. Every text from Jana, every acknowledgement received. "You're doing great, Margaret." Almost there, I reread them, disbelief turning into cold anger. Almost there, at what cost? I grabbed my laptop. Emails from the bank, estate settlement documents from 2015. Everything showed Robert had no debts, every account settled cleanly. How could I have missed it? I had read these before, yet I chose to trust Jana instead. 10 years of blind faith. Now, it felt like betrayal had been written all over those papers she'd shown me after the funeral. My hands shook as I typed a message to my son, David, in Portland. "I need your help. It's serious." Something happened with Robert's accounts. Within hours, he called. His calm voice grounded me, but I could hear the worry. "Mom, what's going on?" I took a deep breath. "I've been paying someone for debts that never existed. Jana, your cousin, took the money, $60,000, and some of it went into accounts I don't even know." There was silence on the line. Then, "Mom, that's wire fraud, potentially criminal. Do you have proof?" "Yes," I said, "receipts, texts, bank confirmation, but I need to know, what else should I document? How do I make sure she can't twist this?" David didn't hesitate. "Keep everything, screenshots, receipts, emails. Everything she sent you. We'll go through it step by step. You're not alone in this, Mom." I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in years, not fear, not confusion, but control. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't being played anymore. That night, I printed every text, every receipt, every document. I laid them all on the table. A paper trail of betrayal. A decade of sacrifices. Clearly traced in black and white. And I made a promise to myself. Jana would answer for this. Every dollar, every lie, every heart emoji. The next morning, I called the bank. Catherine Wu's voice was professional, crisp. "Mrs. Henderson, I'll be honest. We've never had any outstanding loans for your husband. If someone told you otherwise, that's fraud, fraud." The word echoed in my head. It wasn't just a number anymore, it was a crime. And I had been its victim for 10 years. I hung up and looked out at the garden Robert had planted. The roses bloomed defiantly, red against the sky. They reminded me of something simple yet powerful, tenacity. Survival. Justice. I knew then that I wasn't just fighting for my money. I was fighting for the truth. And I wasn't going to stop until it came out. That afternoon, David arrived from Portland. He didn't waste time with small talk. He glanced at the table, eyes widening at the organized chaos of receipts, screenshots, and bank emails. "Mom, this is solid," David said, running his fingers over the stacks of evidence. "Every payment, every text. Jana can't deny it without digging herself deeper." I nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and determination. 10 years of loss, sacrifice, and lies. But now, we had the upper hand. First thing Monday, we visited First National Bank. Catherine Wu met us in a small conference room, her tone serious. "Mrs. Henderson, everything we have shows your husband had no loans, no debts. The accounts were settled shortly after his passing." I felt a cold chill as the reality sank in. 10 years of $500 monthly payments, $60,000, all taken under false pretenses. The betrayal wasn't just financial, it was personal. Deeply calculated, David looked at me. Mom, this is wire fraud. We need a lawyer immediately. I nodded, my voice steady. I already started. Susan Morrison. She's experienced with elder financial abuse. She'll know what to do. That evening, Susan arrived, sharp, professional. And no nonsense. She scanned the evidence laid out on my table. Her brow furrowed. Margaret, she said, finally, what happened to you is textbook elder fraud. Jana took advantage of your grief and isolation. You have receipts, messages, bank confirmations. This is strong, very strong. I swallowed, my throat tight. Can we get my money back? Susan's eyes softened slightly. Yes. But it won't be simple. Family cases like this are messy. She'll deny everything. Try to turn relatives against you, but you have the truth. For the next week, David and I compiled every possible piece of evidence, Western Union receipts, printed texts, bank emails, even notes I had made during my conversations with Jana. I relived the entire decade, each memory stinging, each sacrifice flashing before my eyes, and then, the first warning came. My daughter-in-law, Beth, called in the evening. Margaret, Jana just called me, she said, voice cautious. She's asking if everything's okay. Said you went to the bank. My stomach dropped. She knew somehow. She knew we were digging. David's face hardened. Don't respond, not a word. She's already scared. Let her stew. I obeyed. My hands trembling, but my resolve never stronger. She had preyed on me for a decade. Now the hunt was on. Later that week, Susan called. Margaret, I did some preliminary digging. Jana filed for bankruptcy 3 years ago, but she owns a condo in Lake Tahoe. Purchased in 2017, 2 years into your payments. This wasn't desperation, this was calculated. Theft. I sank into Robert's chair, the weight of betrayal pressing down, 10 years of sacrifice, feeding her luxury. Next step, the police report. Detective Garcia would take everything we had, start tracing the funds, and prepare for legal action. Jana wouldn't see this coming. I looked out the window at the roses Robert had planted. The blooms were red and defiant against the spring sky. Just like me, I wasn't backing down. Not now, not ever. Wednesday morning, David drove me to the Sacramento Police Department. Detective Garcia, a seasoned man with tired eyes, greeted us. Mrs. Henderson, you've brought a lot, he said, gesturing at the neatly organized pile of receipts, emails, and printed texts. Family exploitation cases can be tricky, but you've done your homework. I nodded, swallowing hard. I want a full investigation. Every payment, every message, everything Jana took under false pretenses. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. We'll start with the Western Union transfers. Then subpoena her bank records. If she spent it, luxury items, vacations, big purchases, we'll trace it. As we left the station, I felt a strange mix of fear and relief. 10 years of deception were finally being exposed. That evening, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Margaret, Janet's voice came. Tight and forced. I heard you went to the bank today. Everything okay? I gripped the phone tightly. Everything's fine. Just reviewing some old paperwork. Her voice shifted. Trying to be sweet, you know. Grief can make people confused. If you have questions about Robert's debts, I can help clarify. I handed the phone to David. Don't respond, he said firmly. The next morning, Susan called. Margaret, I've pulled her property records, the condo in Lake Tahoe, a luxury SUV. Recent jewelry purchases, all of it lines up with your payments. This isn't just fraud. It's deliberate, systematic theft. I sank into Robert's chair, letting the weight of 10 years finally register. She had lived off my grief for a decade. Over the next few days, Detective Garcia filed subpoenas. Susan prepared the civil lawsuit, and David helped me organize everything chronologically. Each text, each payment, each paper became evidence of calculated betrayal. Then came the first taste of Jeanette's fear. My daughter-in-law Beth called again. Margaret, Jeanette's asking about you. She sounded nervous. David's eyes narrowed. Good. She's realizing this isn't going away quietly. That Sunday, I stood in the garden, pruning Robert's roses. David and Linda joined me later, reviewing the evidence one more time. "We're ready," Susan said in a video call next week. "We filed a civil suit. We'll demand full restitution, punitive damages, and legal fees. Jana won't have a leg to stand on." I took a deep breath, glancing at the red blooms swaying in the wind. 10 years of fear, worry, and deception had led here, and now, it was finally time to fight back. The courtroom was cold, gray morning light filtering through the tall windows. I clutched my purse, feeling the familiar tremor in my hands, but this time, it wasn't fear. It was determination. David sat beside me, Linda behind, James via video call from Seattle. We were a wall of support. Across the aisle, Jana sat stiffly, her expensive lawyer by her side. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Judge Patricia Brennan entered, her presence commanding silence. "We're here for Henderson v. Henderson, Ms. Morrison. You may proceed." Susan rose confidently, "Your Honor. This case is straightforward. Mrs. Margaret Henderson, a widow, was misled by the defendant into believing her deceased husband owed significant debts. For 10 years, she sent $500 monthly totaling $60,000 under false pretenses. The defendant knew there were no debts and used the funds for personal luxuries. She presented the evidence methodically. Western Union receipts, printed texts from Jana acknowledging each payment, bank statements showing luxury purchases, and the estate settlement confirming Robert's accounts were closed in 2015. Then came the doorbell camera footage. Jeanette's voice filled the silent courtroom. "I used some of that money for my own expenses. I thought you wouldn't miss it." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Jeanette's lawyer jumped up. But the damage was done. Susan calmly continued with testimony from Detective Garcia and the bank representative, confirming the non-existence of Robert's debts. Finally, it was my turn. I walked to the stand, placed my hand on the Bible, and spoke clearly. I trusted family. I grieved. I sacrificed for 10 years thinking I was paying off my husband's debts. But there were no debts. There was only deception. Jana stole from me while I suffered. Jana was visibly shaking now, her composure crumbling. Marcus Webb, her lawyer, attempted to frame it as voluntary assistance, but Susan cut him off. "Your Honor, the evidence is overwhelming. This was deliberate fraud, exploitation of grief, and calculated theft." Judge Brennan removed her glasses and fixed Jana with a steely gaze. "Miss Jana Henderson, you exploited your cousin's trust for personal gain. You accepted $60,000 knowing it was based on lies. I order full restitution of $60,000, plus $30,000 in punitive damages and all legal fees. Additionally, this case will be referred to the district attorney for criminal prosecution." Jana collapsed in her chair, sobbing. I felt a hand on my shoulder, David's. Firm and comforting, the weight of 10 years of lies lifted. Justice had been served. In the months that followed, Jeanette's assets were seized, wages garnished, and the Lake Tahoe condo sold to cover restitution. The criminal trial resulted in a guilty plea with a sentence of 5 years in prison. But for me, the victory wasn't just financial. It was validation. 10 years of fear and sacrifice were finally acknowledged. I could breathe again, knowing truth and justice had prevailed. I returned to the garden, pruning Robert's roses. The red blooms swayed defiantly, a reminder that life, even after betrayal, could flourish. I had fought back and I had won. The first morning after the courtroom felt surreal. I sat in Robert's favorite chair, steaming cup of coffee in hand, sunlight spilling across the garden. The roses bloomed brighter than ever. And for the first time in a decade, I felt peace. David called from Portland, voice full of pride. "Mom, you did it. You stood your ground. I'm so proud of you." Linda's text popped up seconds later. "You're my hero, Mom." James sent a photo of Emma smiling with her diploma. "Debt-free thanks to you." I counted the restitution money once again, $76,000. It was more than just numbers. It was freedom, validation, and a second chance. But the first thing I did wasn't buy something for myself. It was help others. I donated $20,000 to the Sacramento Senior Advocacy Center, the group that had reached out during my case. They set up a legal aid fund for elderly victims of financial fraud. Next, I gave $15,000 to Emma, helping her pay off the last of her student loans. She cried, hugging me so tightly I almost toppled the coffee table. With the remaining money, I finally took the trip Robert and I had always dreamed of, David, Linda, James, and their families joined me in Europe. In Tuscany, I scattered a handful of Robert's ashes in the garden we'd always wanted to visit. It was bittersweet but healing. Back home, life slowly returned to normal but stronger. I fixed the roof, renovated the garden, and rejoined the book club I had quit 10 years ago. Women there treated me like a hero, not for winning in court, but for refusing to be a victim. I also began volunteering with the Senior Advocacy Group, helping others document cases of elder financial abuse. Every month, I met with widows and seniors, showing them they weren't alone and teaching them to fight back. Even my personal life opened a small, joyful chapter. I started having coffee with Frank, a widower from the senior center. We laughed, shared memories of our spouses, and enjoyed companionship without sadness, just warmth and connection. Most importantly, I realized that justice wasn't only about reclaiming money, it was about honoring your dignity, trusting your instincts, and never letting fear silence you. 10 years of deception and sacrifice had forged a new Margaret, one who was resilient, wise, and unafraid. Looking at the roses in the garden, I whispered softly, "We did it, Robert. We finally did it," and for the first time in a decade, I meant it. Months passed, and life settled into a rhythm I hadn't known for years. The roses in the garden flourished, their colors brighter than ever, a living reminder of endurance and patience. I spent mornings reading in the sunlight, afternoons helping seniors with their legal struggles, and evenings sharing stories with my children and grandchildren. The Senior Advocacy Center asked me to speak at their annual fundraiser. I stood before 200 people, all eager to hear my story. I didn't speak as a victim, I spoke as someone who had fought back, reclaimed her life, and turned betrayal into purpose. The hardest part, I told the audience, was accepting that someone I loved and trusted had deliberately hurt me. But once I accepted that truth, everything became clear. Document everything, trust your instincts, and never, ever let shame or fear stop you from seeking justice. The standing ovation lasted 2 minutes. Long enough for me to feel the weight of years lift from my shoulders. Letters poured in afterward, from widows and seniors across the country. Some shared their own stories of betrayal. Others asked for advice. I answered every single one, offering guidance, reassurance, and the knowledge that it was never too late to fight back. Jeanne remained in prison, her appeals denied. Even after her release, she would be paying garnishments for years. I felt no pity, only the quiet satisfaction that justice had been fully served. With the restitution money, life became more than just survival. I traveled, slowly but meaningfully, the Grand Canyon with Linda, Portland with David, Christmas in Seattle with James. I even allowed myself small joys, afternoon teas with Frank, new books in the evenings, quiet walks in the neighborhood I loved. The biggest change, though, wasn't financial. It was freedom from fear, from manipulation, and from self-doubt. I had turned 10 years of loss, pain, and deception into a story of resilience, courage, and impact. One spring morning, I stood among the roses, inhaling their fragrance, sunlight warming my face. Emma ran up, waving a letter from her new job, smiling wide. David called from Portland with a new tech gadget he knew I'd love. Linda brought over her famous cookies, and Frank, he handed me a cup of chamomile tea. Just like old times, I thought of Robert and whispered, "We did it truly this time." The roses swayed in the breeze as if in agreement. Life had returned, but stronger, richer, and more beautiful than I ever imagined, and I knew, without a doubt, that no betrayal, no matter how long, could steal the spirit of someone determined to rise again. Spring turned to summer, and life finally felt lighter. The house, once filled with reminders of loss and deception, now carried laughter and warmth. I spent mornings tending the garden, watching the roses bloom in defiance of the past, and afternoons helping other seniors navigate the tricky waters of finances and fraud. Guiding elderly victims, helping them organize documents, and sharing my story as a warning and an inspiration. Emma called one evening, her voice excited. "Grandma, I just got promoted, and I finally paid off my student loans." I laughed, feeling a swell of pride I hadn't known I could feel so freely. The money I'd once sacrificed for nothing had now been transformed into opportunities for my family. Even Frank became a part of this new chapter, not as a replacement for Robert, but as a friend. A confidant. Someone who made me laugh and reminded me that life still had surprises worth enjoying. We traveled slowly. Deliberately local museums, botanical gardens, a weekend at Lake Tahoe. That trip felt like reclaiming the air she had tried to poison with lies. The court victory and the restitution had given me back more than money. They had given me peace, and with peace came clarity. I realized how carefully I had been living in the shadow of fear and manipulation for a decade. That fear was gone, replaced by purpose. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the Sacramento skyline, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, watching the neighborhood children play. The thought struck me. I had survived loss, deception, and betrayal, and yet here I was still standing, still laughing, still living. Letters from across the country arrived regularly. Widows, seniors, even strangers reached out to thank me for sharing my story, for being brave when I didn't even know if I could be. Some sent stories of their own. Some asked for advice. Some just needed someone to believe them. I answered every single one. Because I understood now. The battle wasn't just mine, it belonged to anyone who had been silenced, taken advantage of, or made to doubt their own instincts. And so, life continued. I traveled, I laughed, I helped others. I loved again in quiet, gentle ways. Justice had been served, but more importantly, I had reclaimed my dignity, my freedom, and my voice. And nothing, not grief, not lies, not betrayal would ever take that away again. As I closed my journal that evening, I whispered to Robert's memory, "We've come a long way, haven't we?" And in the quiet of the garden, surrounded by roses and sunlight, it felt like an answer came in the rustle of the leaves. Yes, we had. Good day, dear listeners. It's Louisa again. I hope you've been with me. This is the part I want you to remember. Here's the truth I've learned. Strength doesn't come from avoiding pain. It comes from facing it, refusing to let it define you. After everything, I realized the real victory wasn't just getting my $60,000 back. It was reclaiming my life, my confidence, and my voice. I had spent 10 years giving, trusting, and sacrificing, believing in lies, but I fought back, and in doing so, I didn't just win against Jana. From seeking justice, and most importantly, never underestimate the power you hold, even in your quietest moments. Now, when I see Robert's roses blooming in the spring sun, I smile, not for the past, not for the money, not for revenge, but for the life I've rebuilt, for the love of family, for laughter, for new beginnings, and I think of the thousands of people who've reached out, sharing their stories, telling me I've inspired them to take action. And remember, your strength is greater than any obstacle, your voice is louder than any lie, and your life is worth protecting.